You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Can't prove that. Critics howl as Fox News shuts down a Tuberville lie, based on an article by Adam Lynch. Tuberville wants a scapegoat, not an accounting. The target is not the problem. Republican senators hauled out thousands of pages of Anthony Fauci's private pandemic diaries and staged the familiar ritual. Summon a public servant, demand that he validate their partisan mythology, and then act aggrieved when the target refuses the trap. Voss, I pleaded the fifth. Sen. Rand Paul said he would move toward contempt. Tommy Tuberville then performed the real purpose of the hearing. Not oversight, but punishment dressed up as inquiry. Who actually holds power? The institutional power in this story sits with Senate Republicans. They control the hearing, the subpoena machinery, the committee agenda, and the public stage. Tuberville is not speaking from the outside. He is using federal power to threaten a former federal official with endless legal harassment. When he says, Foss, I will eventually end up broke or in prison, that is not analysis. It is a promise of state-backed retaliation from a sitting senator. The hearing was theater. The hearing was built to produce a verdict before any evidence mattered. Voss, I was expected to be grilled over alleged inconsistencies in a pandemic whose science changed as the crisis changed. That is a convenient framework for prosecutors of bad faith. Take evolving public health guidance, strip it of context, then recast complexity as guilt. The goal was never to clarify what happened. It was to keep a public scapegoat alive for the benefit of politicians who still need someone to blame for their own failures. Tuberville's bluster is the point. Tuberville's claim that Foss, I killed or had something to do with the killing of 9 million people is not just false, it is politically useful falsehood. It converts a public health official into a singular villain and erases the actual chain of responsibility. The governors, lawmakers, and national political leaders who made decisions, delayed action, and exploited the crisis for advantage. Fox Business's immediate correction mattered precisely because the accusation was so overblown it could not be allowed to stand unchallenged on air. The fact that this correction felt unusual tells you how degraded the default has become. Fox's correction was not moral clarity. The anchor's fact-check was not a sudden conversion to journalistic virtue. It was the residue of expensive legal pain. As critics noted, Fox has already paid heavily for lying. That history matters because it exposes the network's real incentive structure. It is not committed to truth, only to avoiding the next costly disaster when the lies become too radioactive to print. A fact-check delivered out of self-preservation is still a fact-check, but it is not integrity. It is liability management. The pattern is political cruelty. What this story reveals is the Republican method. Manufacture a villain, inflate the body count, and convert public suffering into a prosecutorial spectacle. Tuberville's fantasy about becoming governor and suing Foss, I in state court is the authoritarian instinct in miniature. If federal institutions will not deliver revenge fast enough, weaponize the states. If the numbers do not support the accusation, invent larger numbers. If the evidence is weak, speak louder. This is not confusion. It is deliberate misdirection. The point is to keep accountability aimed downward at one public health official while the political class that failed during the pandemic escapes scrutiny. That is the real scandal. Not that Foss, I refuse the performance, but that elected officials still believe they can turn grief into a prop and call it oversight. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article. With the automated voice of Leibritz, our thanks for listening.